Hello there, Jay here, and today I will be talking about the MCU's latest movie, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And of course, there will be spoilers in this review, so if you haven't watched the movie and if you really worry about spoilers, click off the video right now and come back after you have watched the movie. But if you don't care about spoilers or you have been spoiled and you already just don't care and you're just tired of it or you already watched the movie, feel free to continue on watching this review. So, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness takes place after Spider-Man No Way Home, and the given synopsis of this movie is that Doctor Strange seeks help from Wong and from Wanda to fight a threat that looks like himself. Basically, that is the given plot of the movie, and well, forget about that because the actual plot of the movie is not even that at all. So I would say that the trailer, while it's shown a lot, has been extremely misleading, and that's a good thing at least I think. But yeah, so that is the given plot of the movie. So I'm going to break this movie down with what I enjoy and what I didn't enjoy about it, and I'm going to get into some plot details as well. So here we go. So first off, I'm going to talk about the visual effects in this movie. And of course, this is a Doctor Strange movie. A lot of people are going to look at this movie and think about the visuals first. And for the most part, it delivers on the visual effects really well. For example, the scene where America and Doctor Strange are falling through different universes, that scene looks amazing, and there are a lot of other similar scenes as well. So for the most part, this movie delivers on the visual effects, on the cinematography. But there were some visual effects which look off and look unpolished for some reason, like the scene where they are trying to get to the book of Shanti in the beginning of the movie, and there were some rough spots here and there, but it wasn't a lot. So for the most part, the visual effects look okay. Other than the visuals, the CGI of this movie were done quite well in my opinion. Whether you're talking about the river monster in the beginning of the movie or Gargantos or Wanda power effect, a lot of those CGI were done well, though I'm beginning to notice more and more like raw spots in the CGI in the later Marvel movies. I'm not too sure why. Maybe it is because of the time frame they were in, and plus the pandemic and all that. So I hope that the coming Marvel movies tend to not have this problem as much now that the pandemic is slowly going away. I hope that it all gets better. But for the most part, yes, the CGI look quite good in this movie. So now I'm going to talk about the soundtrack of this movie, which was done by Danny Elfman, the person who did the soundtrack for the Spider-Man trilogy, which was also done by Sam Raimi. So this is a kind of reunion with them. But anyways, about the soundtrack, I think it was good. There wasn't a memorable motif or musical theme, but this soundtrack is kind of more of a immersive kind that lets me as an audience feel more immersed in the scenes, immersed in what is going on in the movie. And usually we have these musical themes where a character appears and a certain theme play. Of course, there are some of that here, but those themes only appear for a few moments. So while the music of this movie might not be memorable, the music does a good job at keeping me immersed in the movie itself. About the pacing of this movie, I felt that the movie moved at a rather fast pace, and it is understandable because the movie is only 2 hours long and it has to tackle the story of Doctor Strange, the story of Wanda, the story of America Chavez, and it also needs to tackle the entire multiverse. So the fact that the movie was able to balance all of that and make it work somehow in such a short runtime, it is incredible. Of course, it is not perfect. The pacing of this movie works very well in the first arc and in the early parts of the third arc, but I felt that the movie was a bit dragged down in the second arc and it was kind of cut short in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the movie. And I wish that the movie was like 30 minutes longer because there were some things that felt rushed. Like for example, I felt that the arc with Wanda could have been dragged out on a bit more. Of course, we already saw Wanda arc a lot in WandaVision and in the previous movies, so perhaps that is why they didn't do more of that here. Other than that, as much as I like America Chavez as a character, I do wish that we gotten more from her, and I felt like there were some scenes of her that were cut out of this movie. As for the tone of this movie is easily the most scariest MCU movie ever. And while it still has the classic MCU flavor with the fun, with the action, with the humor, this movie really felt like a horror movie with the suspenseful moment, with the jump scares, with moment in the soundtrack that keeps me as an audience on the edge of my seats. So this movie was definitely Marvel's first step into making a horror movie, which delivers on what the director Sam Raimi has been talking throughout the interviews, that he really made a horror movie with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And I think that's a very good thing because that Marvel is experimenting with all these different genres and diversifying their content. Besides that, this movie is definitely the most violent movie of the entire MCU. And I mean, we got to see someone get torn to shreds, we got to see someone's head get blown, we got to see some gore, air quotes there, and we got to see a lot of brutal death, so there's a lot of violence. And frankly, it fits the movie with the darker tone. However, with the dark and horror of this movie, there were also some elements of campiness and cheesiness in this movie, and those elements didn't really pop up as much to me during my viewing experience until after the movie. So I say that the campiness and cheesiness kind of works itself well into the movie at times, so it wasn't such a big problem for me. As for the acting of this movie, I felt that the main cast gave quite a strong performance, especially Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda. And this continued on from her performance in WandaVision. She just has such a great emotional range. There were some emotional moments which she really acted out incredibly well that I felt for the character, even though she is the villain of this movie, basically. And besides that, this is a horror movie, as I said, and there were a lot of horror moments involving Wanda. And the fact that her acting was able to give me fear, that is good acting there. So Wanda stole the show for me. Elizabeth Olsen stole the show for me. She kind of overshadows Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange a lot of times, but yeah. As for Benedict Cumberbatch, his acting as Doctor Strange, he continues to give that charisma to the character, which is a good thing, and he plays a lot of variants of himself as well. And well, sometimes they feel like the same characters. Of course, I mean there are different variants of the same person in the multiverse. So I suppose that the variants will somehow and some way feel the same from each other. But I think that Benedict Cumberbatch did well with his acting in this movie. As for this newcomer, Shoshi Gomez, I'm not sure whether I pronounced her name right. Forgive me if I pronounce her name wrong. But anyways, she is quite young in the industry. I mean, she is like 16, and I personally think that her acting is quite good, and Marvel definitely continues on with great casting choices. Aside from that, though, I did read that the actress tried to do some of the action scenes on her own, and I'm not sure whether this is intentional, but there were some scenes where she was showing punches, but the punches didn't really felt like they had weight. So maybe it's a choreography thing or maybe it's a visual thing, but either way, I think that Soshi Gomez has a bright future in front of her in the MCU. So now I'm going to talk about the storyline of this movie, which ultimately the plot is actually quite simple. I mean, It's just Wanda wanting America powers, and the whole movie is America and Strange and Wong trying to stop Wanda, and that is ultimately just that plot of the movie. It's not really complicated, but at the same time, Strange is currently going through some sort of self-crisis, and it's interesting how the whole movie seems to be themed around letting go in some sort of ways. Like Doctor Strange has to learn to let go of his past with Christine. Wanda has to learn to let go of her children, and which it kind of echoes each other story in some ways. And this movie talks about them finding happiness and what does it mean to be happy. And I think that the way the movie is structured, I think that this theme fits really well. Same goes for America Chavez actually. She had to learn to let go of her fear of her past from losing her mothers to her own powers. So this movie really focused in on that term a lot. And for how grand the scale of this movie was, I like that it actually is a story about Doctor Strange. The story focused on Doctor Strange, and I was worried that the movie was going to be so big that it lose its focus, and which it didn't, so I'm glad that it didn't. So now about the individual characters, about Wanda first, because I got some things to say about her. And she has a really good story arc in this movie, don't get me wrong, but I did wish that the movie explained some things better. Like, she is trying to find her children in the multiverse, and she will even go to lengths such as kidnapping and killing a teenager to do it. But then I heard some arguments that why Wanda didn't just create another reality, but I think for me it was obvious that Wanda wanted to have real children that she can interact in the real world. She didn't want her children to be another creation of her own mind again. As for Doctor Strange, while this movie is about him trying to find happiness in some way, trying to find closure, while the movie does touch on this, I could feel that the story kind of get disrupted by the awe and the spectacle at times. So I kind of wish that they done this better, but for what it was pretty good. And as for America Chavez, her story did feel a little bit rushed, especially at the end where she finally uses her power. Don't get me wrong, that moment was kind of funny and epic at the same time, where she just punched Wanda in the face and Wanda give her that face. My theater laugh, and I found that moment quite funny. But okay, anyway, back to the point. I kind of felt that the moment feel a bit rushed, while it was not unearned in any way, but it just felt rushed, and I felt that it could have been more built up, maybe with more focus on her. So that's why I said that I felt that some parts of her story was cut off from the movie. Aside from that, as this movie is America Chavez's first introduction into the MCU, I felt that it was a good introduction, and I am excited to see where this character goes on from here in future movies. Of course, we have other characters like Wong, like Christine, but they are pretty much there to elevate these three main characters, I think personally. And while not to say that it's bad, no, it's not bad, it's quite good in ways. And I kind of like Christine Palmer more in this movie. Granted, it's another version of the character we seen in the first movie, but yeah, I thought that Christine Palmer was used quite well in this movie. As for Wong, he is just like there to serve the plot in some ways, but not bad. Now, for the Illuminati, the camel fest of this movie, I thought for what it was, it kind of felt out of place for a little moment for me. But seeing the movie as a whole, I can get why the Illuminati has to be there. And well, some can see this as an excuse for inserting cameos into this movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was jumping in my seat when I saw Richard Reeds come out on screen as the Fantastic Four. But yeah, I kind of thought the Illuminati part was a bit dragged on, to be honest, and I kind of wish they'd done that part in a better way. And as I mentioned in the earlier parts of the video, I did wish that the movie towards the end, like the end 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that it was kind of more fleshed out better, because the ending kind of felt abrupt and it felt rushed. So I wish they did that better. But then again, this is a lot of problems that most Marvel movies have, that they have a rush finally. But I guess they only can try to improve then. Now I'm going to talk about the post-credit scenes here, and well, one was confusing and another was a troll. Basically, it was a troll. But yeah, the first credit scene we see this woman comes out and telling Doctor Strange that he needs to fix an incursion for happening, and I kind of thought that first credit scene was a bit abrupt, seeing what happened at the end of the movie. So that jump, there must be a time jump there, but it kind of just felt confusing as a whole. But not to say that it was a bad post-credit scene. I mean, post-credit scenes, they just set up the next movie. So nothing much to say about that. As for the last credit scene, well, that is just a troll, so nothing much to say about that anyway. Overall, while this movie isn't like the best of the MCU and it has its issue, this movie is an extremely enjoyable, fun, and thrilling time in the cinemas, and it's definitely meant to be seen on the big screen. But anyways, what do you think about it? Did you like the movie? Maybe you didn't like the movie. Maybe you agreed with me or disagreed with me. Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And let's just have a discussion. Let's just chat and share our thoughts. Anyways, stay safe, stay tuned, and see you next time.